A 34-year-old cold case that got solved through chewing gum, and yet another where loads of clues to identify the victim have been found thanks to new information and developments in technology. Welcome to Bizarre Cases, and today we'll be exploring two cases from ages ago, one of which was finally solved and one which yet remains unsolved. Without further ado, let's walk into the edge of the unknown. Blanche Kimball. In 1976, Blanche Kimball, then 70 years old, lived in Augusta, Maine. She had worked as a dental technician and a practical nurse at the Togus Veterans Administration Center for 3 years prior to her retirement. The majority of Blanche's life is unknown. Her parents, Elliot and Fanny Bell, welcomed her into the world in Albany. Blanche never got married and never had kids. A half-sister born when Blanche was 10 years old, a brother who died in 1916, two aunts, and a few distant cousins who had moved out of state by the 1970s made up Blanche's little family. In Augusta, where Blanche lived, State Street is a 4-lane street that is currently flanked on either side by a few apartment buildings, gas stations, and auto dealerships. Blanche Kimball lived in a sizable 2-story wooden frame house as described by the Kennebec Journal, but the place was long since leveled and the site turned into a parking lot. Nonetheless, Blanche was living alone in that large mansion in 1976 while occasionally renting out rooms to transient boarders. As neighbors do, they kept an eye on Blanche's entrances and exits. They began to notice that the elderly woman who lived next door hadn't been seen for days in the middle of June 1976, perhaps even weeks. In actuality, Memorial Day weekend was the last time anyone saw Blanche Kimball. Blanche hadn't visited or left her home on State Street in almost 2 weeks. The neighbors worriedly called the police to ask about Blanche. On June 12, 1976, Detective Sergeant Carol Clement of the Augusta Police Department knocked on the door of 352 State Street in Augusta to introduce himself to anyone who might be inside. Knock, pause, listen. He repeated the sentence numerous times, but every time he knocked, the same thing happened: silence. In the middle of the 1970s, an unlocked front door in central Maine would not have been odd, so he jiggled the knob to check if it had been left unlocked. Nevertheless, after giving the door a quick half-turn, Detective Clement discovered that it was locked from the inside. He tried knocking again before realizing that the only way to get inside Miss Kimball's house was through force. The home was in what he described as general disarray. It was impossible for him to determine whether Blanche Kimball's appearance was messy or untidy. But as Detective Clement made his way through the first-floor rooms and into the kitchen and living area, he realized he wasn't just dealing with a dirty home. Blanche Kimball, age 70, had been dead for a number of days when Detective Clement discovered her there on the ground, surrounded by glass fragments and with blood splatters on the kitchen cupboards. Investigators would have to wait until the autopsy to find out for sure how Miss Kimball died, but it appeared that she had been stabbed. Yet one thing was obvious: they were dealing with a homicide injury. Nevertheless, 4 decades later, in 2012, the police had fresh information in their possession. DNA evidence established that the blood found on Kimball's kitchen drawer was from a man. A homeless man named Raub was charged with stabbing another homeless man in October 2011. This rekindled police interest in the case from 1976. Detectives follow a suspect until he spits, then they collect the saliva before swooping in with an arrest team. This is the concept of cold case investigations popularized by television. Nevertheless, 4 decades later, in 2012, the police had fresh information in their possession. DNA evidence established that the blood found on Kimball's kitchen drawer was from a man. A homeless man named Raub was charged with stabbing another homeless man in October 2011. This rekindled police interest in the case from 1976. 3 packs of gum and 3 packs of cigarettes were purchased at the suggestion of Chiesinski. In the afternoon of July 18th, Chiesinski and his companion Frank Clark traveled to the University District, where Chiesinski asked a different homeless man if he had seen Raub while wearing khakis and usual clothing. At 45:20, Chiesinski discovered Raub hunched up against a brick structure. He first tried with cigarettes before offering $5 for the survey. "I don't smoke," Raub said. Chiesinski tried the gum, but Raub retorted that he was toothless. Chiesinski stated that he could earn the $5 if he simply chewed the gum and evaluated the flavor. He spat the apple pie gum into another manila envelope, which was quickly delivered to the Maine State Police, who verified that the DNA in it matched that from the murder scene from 1976. A used piece of Wrigley's sweet watermelon flavor gum was enclosed in the third envelope, which was likewise sent with the first one. 4 years after being arrested for Blanche Kimball's murder, Gary entered a guilty plea and passed away in 2016. It's yet unclear what Raub's motive was in the alleged killing. This mystery would now most likely remain until posterity. Jane Doe. Despite there being a picture of the victim, this murder in Chautauqua County, New York, went unsolved for around 40 years. A truck driver was out and about on December 6th at the crack of dawn. He thought it would be a typical day. Little did he know the terrifying turn it would take. While he was traveling down Old Route 17, he saw an oddity. He noticed a limp figure in the distance and instantly hauled to the truck because he thought it was an injured person. The reality was much bloodier. In a ditch, a woman's body was found dead. Blood gathered around her, and she had nearly no clothing on. Her dying had not been painless. The driver called the police right away because he was alarmed. In a hurry to solve the mystery, they arrived at the spot. They were unaware at the time that this case would become one of Chautauqua County's few remaining mysteries. The woman had been beaten, shot, and sexually raped. She had no identification on her, and no one ever came forward to claim her body. The police had scant information. The woman had no handbag and driver's license. Apart from a mysterious letter, there were no other items of personal property. The letter's code had not been cracked yet, but the astute cops were determined to get all information they could. With the equipment that was readily available in 1983, they assembled a number of clues. The police gathered that Jane Doe was roughly 33 to 37 years old. She had conceived at least one kid, and that too roughly 15 years prior to the murder. The authorities concluded after extensively studying her teeth that she was either Canadian or European. She also had an IUD, which at that time was only available in 4 nations, one of which was Canada. She wore standard European clothing. The police didn't get very far despite their skill in putting these hints together. These hints were completely useless. Even DNA tests on the victim's clothing failed to help the police identify her. They were still unable to identify the woman's identity specifically. It didn't make much sense because the woman had to be absent, right? She must have had a family, been employed, and lived somewhere. Her abrupt departure would have caused concern. The letter was the only additional tip the authorities had. The letter proved challenging to decode because both the letters and the numbers appeared arbitrary. They require the victim's identification in order to acquire perspective on them. They won't have any context to aid with letter decoding till after that. Thus, the Chautauqua County Police decided to use a technique that was unthinkable in 1983: social media. Nothing can replace virality. On January 21, 2021, they created a Facebook page for Jane Doe as a result. In 2022, the case had fresh leads that pointed to Jane Doe. Tom DiZino, a senior investigator with the Unsolved Crime Unit, claims that they now have 2 new clues thanks to new forensic technology. The drawing differs significantly from earlier sketches. She had a tracheotomy scar on her neck for a relatively young woman, and she had a scar behind her left ear that maybe is a result of a medical procedure, or are they connected, explained DiZino. DiZino claims that they estimate the woman's age to be around 35. The FBI created the Investigate Genealogy Profile, the second new piece of information. Our Ellery Jane Doe has a strong concentration from the Netherlands, Belgium, and West Germany, described DiZino. Also, they were able to identify the apparel she was wearing. According to investigators, it was expensive and came from Europe. The blouse, the camisole from Italy, the skirt from Italy or Germany, and the jacket are definitely from Germany, and they're not cheap. They're really good-lasting clothes, DiZino said. Investigators also discovered the woman had at least one child who would now be in their 40s or 50s, thanks to forensics. As a result of all this new information, investigators hope to solve this case once and for all and give our Jane Doe the justice she deserves. What are your views on this video? Do you think that the Jane Doe case can have a different approach which may lead to its unsolving? Let us know your views in the comment section below. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked our efforts in the research of this video, make sure to share, like and subscribe to our channel so that you never miss out on our content. Catch you in the next video.